Kubernetes leverages Container Networking Interface plugins, or CNI plugins, to manage networking within its clusters, and it handles tasks such as IP address assignment to your pods, network routing, and more. AKS uses two networking models: overlay networks and flat networks. Overlay networks conserve virtual IP addresses by using a separate CIDR IP address range for your pods, and you'll use an overlay network to provide the largest scale and simpler IP address management. Now, there's a lot in this diagram, but the key point is that there is a subnet for your nodes and a separate address space used for your pods. And that address space need not be routable to your entire wider network. Network Address Translation, or NAT, is used between the pod network and the virtual network, allowing you to use a smaller address space for your AKS cluster. You should use an overlay network to conserve IP addresses. With a flat network, pods get full network connectivity and can be directly reached by their private IP address from any connected network. The flat networking model requires a large, contiguous virtual network address space. Use the flat network model to provide direct connectivity between pods and connected networks. In AKS, there are a variety of Container Network Interface, or CNI plugins, available to cater to different networking requirements. For your overlay networks, you can choose Azure CNI Overlay, which supports up to 250 pods per node with a simple configuration, but no direct external pod access. Some limitations of Azure CNI Overlay include that you can't use Application Gateway to route traffic to your workloads, and you can't use virtual nodes to burst capacity from AKS to Azure Container instances. The other overlay networking option is KubeNet. KubeNet is the legacy option, and it also prioritizes virtual network IP address conservation, but it has several drawbacks, including limited scalability. It also requires manual route management. It doesn't support Windows node pools, virtual nodes, Azure network policies, or sharing virtual networks between AKS clusters. For the flat networking model, you can choose to use Azure CNI Node Subnet, which provides direct external access to pods, simpler configuration, but does have limited scalability as it inefficiently uses the IP addresses of your virtual networks. Or you can choose to use the newer Azure CNI Pod Subnet. Azure CNI Pod Subnet offers direct external pod access and supports modes for both efficient virtual network IP address usage or large cluster scaling. Now, Azure CNI Pod Subnet is in preview at the time of this recording. Of all of these options, if you need an overlay network, Azure CNI Overlay is recommended. If you need a flat network, Azure CNI Pod Subnet is likely to be recommended once it is out of preview. Now, you can upgrade from KubeNet to Azure CNI Overlay once, but you can't go back to KubeNet. And there are some limitations, but I won't detail those here for the sake of time. Instead, check out the resources for details on how to upgrade.